Hello, and just a few thoughts about the world today. Since we're in self-isolation, I've kind of taken it upon myself to record a little video message about the day in the life of a coach, a day in the life of a learning and development professional, somebody who spends his life helping organisations change the way they think and feel about how they want to operate. And one of the things that's quite interesting right now is how we look after people, and whether we do actually look after people. I'm sure many of you have got fabulous HR organisations that genuinely feel as though we look after people, but I question sometimes whether actually we do look after people properly. I have fielded quite a lot of phone calls in the last 24, 48 hours. As for lots of people, we're kind of 3 weeks in now to that window of self-isolation. And I was listening to a podcast this morning, and in fact, it was Eckhart Tolle, and he was talking about this idea of a comfort zone, and he was saying that maybe the comfort zone is a very fictitious thing. Now, for those of you that have ever heard me speak before, then you'll know that I agree with that, because obviously the research that's out there says it's kind of one of those things that we've socially constructed, really. But what he was suggesting is that if we buy into the notion of this idea of a comfort zone, then maybe this is the place or the space, our comfort zone, where we've created just enough noise for ourselves, just enough noise in life, in order for us to not really pay attention to the things that we really do need to necessarily pay attention to. It's the kind of place where we can just be distracted enough and in a sort of sensorily happy place, whether that be at work or at home, whether it be in sport or whatever it is. And so one of the things that you may or may not know is that we as a company are involved in at times in the teaching of that coach education, and there's some ideas that very often sit within that. There's some fundamental principles that you buy into when you're supporting someone, when you're sharing coaching with an organisation or a person, is around the cause and effect equation. Which side of it do you sit on? Do you live at cause, where you have choice about how you want to show up in the world, where that you recognise that you've got choices about how you want to be? Or do you sit at the effect side, where you're now in a place where you are simply responding to all the events of the world and actually pretty much a victim to it? Sometimes the science bit around it is about a loci of control. Do I live completely and utterly driven in reaction to the world, or do I have the resilience, the emotional courage, the ability to be able to own how I want to respond and be in it as I deal with the how the world deals its situations and circumstances to me? And so there's probably quite a few people right now who generally, maybe your colleagues, your friends, your family members, who are struggling a little bit. They are maybe stuck at times with a little bit of effect going on in their life, so actually they're finding all this a little bit overwhelming. They're finding some stuff actually that's probably getting on top of them, that there's some frustration and things featuring in your relationships, because of course the distractions that we'd have by going out to dinner, going and doing our sport and our hobby, or being at work, some of those distractions aren't there anymore. So actually for most people, they're well and truly outside of their comfort zone right now. So that stuff that they wouldn't ordinarily pay attention to is suddenly very real for them. It's very there, it's very visceral, it's very in their life. And so one of the things that perhaps we need to recognise and remember is that everybody is doing the best they can with what they've got. Is no one really turns up each morning, wakes up each morning and goes, you know what, today, of all days, this is the day that I'm going to be the worst human being alive. I'm going to do just everything I can to simply annoy every other human being and and to be as awful as I can be, because that's not necessarily what any of us set out to do. We always set out to be the best version of ourselves, and actually sometimes it's other people and other people's judgment around us, around whether we do or don't actually achieve that. So maybe now my sort of message for the day is, as things for some people, maybe people are getting a little bit frustrated in their relationships, maybe the novelty of being at home is kind of wearing off, is just to recognise we can choose how we show up in the world. We do have the ability to do that, and if that's a challenge and a struggle, then actually that's what people like me support people in doing. So maybe actually what we need is to have a little bit of grace and a little bit of humility, and maybe a little bit of gratitude, and recognise that everybody is doing the best they can with what they've got. It just maybe they've got different resources, they've got access to different emotions, to different things, to different feelings. They're going to respond to the world in different ways. So maybe they're just not necessarily showing up in the same way that we would right now. And if you recognise that, then instead of getting frustrated back, then maybe actually it's about sharing with them and supporting them, and recognising that maybe they have more situation to deal with right now than necessarily they have resources to be able to cope with it. And we start to see that when, frustration creeps in. So maybe time today just to take a moment and actually just recognise and think about the fact that everybody is doing the best they can with what they've got, and if you need a little bit more than currently you've got right now, then maybe you engage in a little bit of self-care. And if you definitely haven't got more than you need for your situation right now, then maybe actually you get hold of someone like me to have a conversation to help you tap in to all those inner resources. But I wish